Well, here we are again. We just finished the lesson about the disciples who were on their way to the city of Emmaus. And, that was my next one. And so now we're on to remember when the disciples ran all the way back to tell them in Jerusalem, and they had their own stories to tell. And then Jesus came and showed up right in the middle of them, right in the middle of the room, and he didn't have to knock on the door neither. And they were first afraid. They thought he was a ghost. And he was like, "I'm not a ghost. Touch me, feel me. A ghost doesn't have flesh as you see me have." So I love that Jesus did not rebuke them and say, "I told you. What did I tell you?" None of that from Jesus. He just encourages us to believe. He says, "Hey, here's the proof." I love that about Jesus, that he doesn't. He says that he did not come to condemn the world. He didn't come to make us feel bad about who we are. He did not come to make us feel bad. He came to actually lift us up. He says, "Hey, I present before you death and life." God said this in the Old Testament. He said, "I present to you death and life. Oh, how I would that you choose life." And that's the way Jesus is. He says, "Hey," he doesn't rebuke them for not believing. He's simply, "Hey, here's the facts. Here's who I am here, and so I clearly am who I said I was." So I love that about Jesus. Okay, so this is the lesson called Doubting Thomas. And the memory verse is from John 20, verse 29. And it says, "Blessed are they that have not seen, yet they believe." So blessed are they that have not seen, yet have believed. And that would be me. That would be you if you believe in Jesus Christ. That means I'm blessed, because I have not seen him, yet I believe in him. Okay, so let's get this party started here. Got some fellers and some more fellers. They're all kind of gathered around here. And this here feller. And they're all talking. Guess what do you think they might be talking about? I think there's probably only one subject of the day, not only among his disciples, but then all the other people who saw and heard. I can imagine what Jerusalem was like on these days. It was terrifying. It was exciting. People were saying, "I don't know, I heard this, I saw it," and just so much going. I don't think anybody was bored around Jerusalem right after all of this. Excuse me. When the disciple Thomas was a young boy, he might have said more than once, "If you can't prove it, I won't believe it." And as he became a young man, he might still have insisted, "I doubt it is true unless I can see it for myself." Excuse me. Thomas always seemed to doubt before he would believe. Thomas was a good man, and he was also always loyal to Jesus as his followers. But for some reason, Thomas was not present when all the other disciples saw Jesus after his resurrection. For some reason, Thomas wasn't there the first time. They kept telling Thomas what had happened. The disciples were so excited about seeing Jesus alive, they talked of nothing else. Mary Magdalene and Mary and Salome all saw the empty tomb, said one disciple. And an angel told them Jesus was alive, said another. They're telling Thomas all of these things. "Hey, you said you won't believe until you get the facts. Here's the facts." "I didn't believe it at first, but I saw him with my own eyes," said Peter. "Jesus has risen from the dead and is alive." And was the disciple Thomas convinced, do you think? Even Peter said, I saw him, I know, and I wouldn't lie. Do you think that Thomas believed even after all of this was said? Nope. He said, and this is a direct quote, I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in his hands and put my fingers into them and place my hand into his side. Because he had seen, this was a public, the crucifixions were a public thing, because it was also meant to, they crucified criminals. And for someone to be crucified, it was considered that they must have done really something bad. And it was in a public place. You could always see the crucifixions. And when Jesus was crucified, they normally would, if it was getting towards the end and they kind of had to go, and the person wasn't dying fast enough, I kind of give all the kids maybe sometimes too many details, but I can't stop myself. They usually would break their legs, and so they couldn't take a deep breath anymore. But they didn't do that with Jesus. They were like, you know what, he's already dead. But what one of the soldiers did is he drew his sword, and he shoved his sword into Jesus' side, and it actually pierced his heart. So Thomas knew that for this to be Jesus, this person is going to have to be walking and talking with nails in their hands and all the way through, and a wound into their side that I can put my hand into. And if a person is walking and talking and they have that, they're probably not going to be walking and talking unless there's something up with that person that is beyond human. So Thomas said, hey, until I can do that, he said in the Bible, quote, I will not believe. I get off track and then I lose my place. 8 days later, the disciples were again huddled together in a room, and this time Thomas was with them. They were still afraid the priests might come and arrest them, so they made sure the door was locked. Suddenly Jesus was there with them in the room. Peace be with you, he greeted them. It's a little ironic to think is, there's, you go to turn around and his what he says is peace be with you. But he also, I love that when we're scared, he tries to calm us. Jesus saw Thomas. So Jesus is there. They're all like, look behind you, Thomas. Jesus saw Thomas and knew Thomas didn't believe that he was alive. Maybe this will help you believe, Jesus said. You see the nail prints in my hand? Feel them. Now put your hand into the wound into my side. Thomas, please don't doubt any longer. Believe. Thomas fell on his knees, and with tears streaming down his face, he said reverently, I love this, because this whole account gives me so much hope. For I have family and friends and people that I love that they're like, I want nothing to do with your Jesus. I don't want to hear it. I don't believe in it. Not having it. Well, that kind of sounds a little bit like Thomas, right? Hey, until this happens, I'm not going to believe. So it gives me hope, because even though you think, oh, how awful, how bad of them, of Thomas not to believe in Jesus, but yet Thomas has this response when he is confronted with a truth that he cannot dismiss, that Jesus is alive. He has seen for himself. And so this was Thomas's reaction. Thomas fell on his knees and with tears streaming down his face said reverently, you are my Lord and my God. And so Thomas, although he doubted, I believe he had such a strong commitment to Jesus and everything that he did for Jesus after that. And I have a lot of hope that I have family and friends who they have not believed for so long and done things that are, you think, oh, they're so far gone, they'll never, you won't never see them in church. As my pastor says, they're as lost as a ball in the high weeds. But I have every hope, and I think that sometimes Jesus said to one of his disciples, one of the things he said to them was, he said, one servant was forgiven who owed just a little bit, and the master who they owed it to, and the other man was forgiven this tremendous amount. And Jesus asked the disciples, who would love that master more? And they said, well, probably the one who was forgiven a whole lot. And so when Jesus said that those who are forgiven much will love much. And I think that Thomas felt so overwhelmed that he knows that he is being forgiven for much because he refused and said, I will not believe. And so I have faith that those who are lost as a ball in the high weeds, that they will make incredible Christians, that they have such a great opportunity because they can reach people who have done things that I have not done. I haven't been there. I can't tell them how to get out of that other than, hey, you need to trust Jesus. So those who have been forgiven much will love much, and can be used by God in great ways, sometimes even greater ways than anyone else. So Jesus must have been disappointed when Thomas didn't believe him at first. Jesus said to Thomas, you believe because you have seen me, but blessed are those who have not seen me and yet have believed. Jesus didn't scold Thomas for not believing. Jesus knew Thomas wasn't just stubborn, but he honestly wanted to know if Jesus was alive. And Thomas's doubt led to questions, and when he searched for answers, he no longer doubted. Scripture tells us that those who seek Jesus will find him. We don't need to doubt Jesus is alive today. We have proof he lives from the words in the Bible and from other Christians who share what Jesus means to them. What proof do you have in your life that proves that Jesus is alive? Well, I have proof in the fact that when I did believe in Jesus, that when I asked him to forgive me of my sins, and when I asked him to come into my heart, something happened in my heart, and I experienced that for myself. That was not Jesus at the door. It's my son. But I have experiences with him. I have had prayers answered. I have had a lot of experiences with him. I know that Jesus is alive. But I love the fact that Thomas didn't just believe right away. And people who don't believe in Jesus, they don't believe in God, they say, oh, there's not enough proof, there's not enough evidence. But I love that there was a doubting Thomas among his very own disciples, his closest group. Because I have more faith than when Thomas has experiences afterwards, and when he spreads the gospel afterwards, he's not one who just believes any little thing. I'll buy that. So I love the fact that there was a doubting Thomas among the group. And I love that same doubting Thomas kneeled before Jesus and said, my Lord and my God. That was his conclusion. And if you do doubt about Jesus, if you do doubt about God, seek him. Because if you do seek him, you will find him. In fact, many people, I wish I knew exactly who and what books, but many people have started out to disprove the Bible, to disprove the gospel, to disprove about Jesus. But when they came to the resurrection and they could not disprove it because the evidence was too clear, there's been several. One of them has been her, and there's another one, and one of them they recently did a movie about. They came to the conclusion, my Lord and my God, and they had to change their whole thing about their book because they ran